I offer my formal greeting, good morning, to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and in Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Middle East. Good evening to our friends in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, and Australia. Nice to see you. Glad you could join us. I'm speaking to you from Malaysia. I'm going to be teaching a 5-day retreat in a couple of days. Come down to visit some old friends, and happy to continue with the Zoom live stream. I believe we have some questions, JC.
Question 1. Dear Ajahn, I'm having trouble understanding how a sotapanna becomes free from doubt in rebirth. Other factors of dependent origination one can observe directly. For example, I can see in the present feeling leads to craving. Thus, one can overcome doubt regarding this aspect of Dhamma and many others. However, regarding rebirth, to directly observe the process driving it, one would have to have a special psychic abilities to remember their previous deaths and rebirths. So lacking the ability to see it, how can one overcome doubt regarding the process by which rebirth occurs? Even if one see craving driving bhava becoming in the present, how could they be sure this would continue after death? Thank you.
I don't think one needs to have directly seen past lives or future lives to believe in rebirth. I think a practitioner can develop conviction through the 3 methods of cultivating wisdom Lord Buddha recommended. One is through listening, studying. The other is through contemplation. Does it make sense? And then the other is through the direct experience that comes from the bhavana, through practice. So one of the qualities of a stream enterer is that they have unshakable faith in Lord Buddha. So if a person is a stream enterer, they have unshakable faith in Lord Buddha and his teachings, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, the well-practiced Sangha. So when Lord Buddha describes the factors of conventional right view, one of those is there is karma, there are previous births, there are future births. So if you believe the Dhammacakka Sutta, for example, where Lord Buddha explains the Four Noble Truths, outlines the Eightfold Path, it's the same Buddha that explains the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path that also says karma and rebirth is real. So sometimes we have to take things on board because the being that we trust is the wisest is saying this is wise. This is sometimes samma ditthi, right view. Sometimes that's described as skillful view. In terms of actually realizing sotapanna, stream entry, for myself, I doubt that a person could actually put the required amount of effort to realize the first level of enlightenment if you didn't actually really believe in rebirth and karma. If you don't believe in rebirth and karma, what's the point of trying to liberate the mind? If you just have this one life, you might as well just have as much fun as possible, and you can use other people for your pleasure. You can indulge in as much sensuality and hedonism as you like. You can steal whatever you can get away with. Who cares? You hear this all the time. You only live once. No. And so to actually want for the mind to experience nibbana, so sometimes people don't quite understand what stream entry is. Sometimes there's a tendency to overestimate certain experiences, because in mental cultivation, a practitioner can see anicca, impermanence, very clearly. They can have, and then when they see anicca, impermanence very clearly, sense of self can go away for a period of time. And then the person can have that sense that they've experienced anatta. Some practitioners then extrapolate that they've realized anatta. What's happening in those beginning stages of practice is that a person is having a glimpse of it. But that's not the realization of it. It's very important. It's very wonderful. It shows your potential. It shows you the truth. It lays the foundation for deeper insights. But realizing anatta is a different matter. In the stream entry experience, from what I've heard, discussions with my teacher, the practitioner will experience nibbana for a period of time. So, and if a practitioner is experiencing nibbana, that's a place where the four elements find no footing and the consciousness has no showing. So there's no body, there's no world, there's no sense of a being who is having or who just had an insight. There is a profound quality of clarity and awareness that knows voidness, emptiness. And in terms of thought activity, the thoughts that occur when a practitioner is experiencing nibbana is a cessation of suffering. And so that's the profundity of the kind of insight that would make a person a stream enterer. In terms of deepening our faith, because I do believe it's helpful, Lord Buddha said it's skillful view. I just did a quick search the other day when I was first reading through this question, and there are a lot of what I would say quite believable seeming documentaries and clips on children who remember their past lives. So various TV crews, various researchers, I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's a university in America somewhere where they are actually studying children who remember their past lives. So they will go and they will actually interview them and then try to verify them. So there are many, many cases where a child remembers who they were, what their name was, what their mother's name was, what their father's name was, how they died. And oftentimes they haven't been to that place this lifetime. And so in some of these documentaries, there's interviews with the children, interviews with the children's parents, and then the people who are doing the research going to those places and discovering there was such and such a person who his or her parents were named this, and this is how they died. So, and this is it's been done in India, it's been done in America, it's been done in UK. So it's many different places. So I think that kind of research into the anecdotal evidence that is available is useful. I think it would come under your study of karma and rebirth. For myself, I mean, different people have different tendencies. I was 15 years old when I went to the Hare Krishna restaurant in Brisbane, and the very first time I heard on Sundays they would offer a vegetarian meal and do some chanting, and the very first time I heard the word reincarnation and karma, this lifetime, I believed it that moment and never had any doubt since. For me, it just kind of clicked. Oh, that actually makes sense. And until that point, I'd been wondering, why are some people poor? Why are some people rich? Why are some people attractive? Why are some people unattractive? Why are some people born where there isn't enough food? What's going on? At least as a theory, it makes some sense as to the diversity of experience that beings can have in the conditioned world. If there are conditions prior to these conditions, at least it is something of an explanation as to why there are such a diversity in experiences. So and then I would assume that's coming from my faith that I've had in these things in previous lives, so that when I heard the concept, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't accept it blindly because some bald head guy in a saffron robe said it was true. It actually made sense to me. And it didn't make sense to me at the time that if I devoted my life to living in a heaven realm with Krishna, that would be the ultimate purpose of my life. I couldn't at that time take that on. But I could take on karma and rebirth. And so I did. And that was a little bit unusual because my mother and my father didn't believe in such things. Neither did my brothers or sisters. So they all thought I was a bit weird. And that's okay. I'm happy to be weird in this way. So apparently my father is a Tushita Deva now, so he got over his disbelief of devas in his subsequent life. So so yes, I think once a person is a sotapanna, having access to the deeper jhanas becomes easier because there's less kilesa in the heart. And so I think it's, as practitioners' samadhi develops, not all, but many will have some dreams and glimpses of their own past lives. And I remember for myself, just tell a personal story, try to make it relatable. I was practicing at Ajahn Dunn's monastery when I was in my third pansa. I just spent 1 month, but I was doing a lot of walking and sitting. And one night, I woke up early in the morning to continue my practice, and I was having a lucid dream, like a very vivid dream. And a monk was walking towards me in this dream, and he had fair skin, like an olive skin and green eyes, and he was wearing a robe that was this color, and he was quite cheerful in his demeanor. And he was walking towards me, and there was this feeling as I was waking up, there's this feeling of, I know him, I know him, I know him. Who is it? And as I woke up, I had this strong feeling, me in Afghanistan 1500 years ago. Now, what was interesting about this particular lucid experience is that I had no idea at the time that Buddhism had ever been in Afghanistan. And I had no idea that there were white people in Afghanistan. When I did some study, I learned that Alexander the Great, I think he died malaria or something, trying to conquer India, foolish fool's errand. And his followers stayed in that area, the Gandhara kingdom. And they were, of course, instrumental in producing some of the first Buddha images, the Gandhara Buddha sculpture, which many people say has a Hellenistic influence. You can see this kind of Grecian appearance to these Gandhara images. So it kind of made sense. It made sense that with my interest in stone sculpture, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if Ajahn Bhikkhu had been banging around in those parts 1500 years ago. I was recently in Calcutta. I went to the Calcutta airport and I was enjoying, not the Calcutta Museum. I also went to the Calcutta airport, but I was at the Calcutta Museum enjoying they have a beautiful selection of statuary dating from the Mauryan, the Gandhara, the Gupta, the Pala, and very beautiful. And then there's that interesting sense that you have of I might have paid respects to some of these in a past life in a different place. And I tend to get very rapturous and tranquil and joyful when looking at beautiful Buddhist art. So yes. Next question, JC.
Question 2, dear Ajahn. Whenever I try to meditate for a longer period, I will feel pressure building up on my head. How do I overcome this problem? Thank you.
So that's not uncommon. It's probably a good sign that the energy is collecting in that one area. What you can try to do is consciously relax the field awareness. Try to be aware of the whole body. Be mindfully aware of the whole body. And a way that you can do that is like feeling the buttocks touching the pillow or the mat underneath you, your legs touching the mat, you still maintain the awareness of the breath, but you're aware of the breath within a larger space. So you just relax the contraction, become aware of the whole body, and then, but the center of the awareness is mindful of the breathing. And you can just, one has to train oneself, okay, consciously relax the awareness, broaden the awareness, feel the knees, feel the bottom, feel the shoulders, and then continue to be aware of the breath, but just with a more relaxed awareness. Another thing you can do is the metta practice in the heart area. Just kind of come down into the heart area. May I be well. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Breathing in, may all beings be well. Breathing out, may all beings be happy. You can also bring it into that heart area and expand it out through the center of the body and mind. And then go back to the breath. In various ways you can kind of relax the concentration.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 3. Dear Ajahn, a close relative suffers from persistent neck, back, and other joint pain. In meditations, you have talked about directing your attention to pain, to acknowledge that this is just pain in body. Could you talk about this some more? Can mental practices like this help even outside of the meditation period? Thank you.
So all meditators have to develop some skill of meditating with pain. For myself, of course, when I come to sit straight away, there usually isn't much physical pain. It's more of an experience of up to 20, 25, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Pain at the bottom, pain in the knees, pain in the back. That's very helpful, because when you don't have too much pain and you're able to train in being mindful of the breath, you're establishing more presence of mind, more clarity, more mindfulness, so that when the pain does arise, you're able to work with it with a somewhat centered mind. For a person who has chronic pain, it's harder. And but it might be valuable to do an actual course. I think it's called MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And the teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, who developed that program, it was developed specifically for people who had illness or chronic pain or diseases that involved a lot of pain. And they actually teach you how to use mindfulness use mindfulness as a way to get some pain management control. But I'm not a teacher in that method, but I would recommend doing some research, seeing if there's someone teaching it or if there's something online. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Something that we can do is when pain comes up and you feel like you can't sit with it, you can't stand it, you just say to yourself, okay, 10 more breaths. And then you see, after normal breaths, natural breaths, and then you see at the end of that 10th breath, okay, you give yourself permission. After 10 breaths you can move or whatever. But then often it's the case with pain that is in waves, and it's more intense and then less intense. And often it's the case that after 10 breaths, it's not as painful as it was 5 breaths ago, and you can say to yourself, okay, 10 more. And it's just that working with that edge of giving yourself permission if you really have to, but just try for 10 more breaths. Just try for 10 more breaths. What's interesting and valuable about working with pain, cultivating mindfulness with pain, is that if we are able to do it, the mindfulness actually gets better. It actually gets stronger. And with stronger mindfulness, then that's when we're able to separate awareness out from feeling. But training in it, like doing 10 more breaths and then just seeing, okay, can you do this? Can you do this? And another thing I found helpful, everybody knows, most people know, when practicing for 10 hours a day in Bodh Gaya, as I've often done, the metta practice is when there's an experience of you as a sentient being, conscious being who's experiencing pain, you can add something to that experience. We just add it, breathing in, may I be well, Breathing out may be happy, breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy. You're bringing a pleasant feeling, samatha practice, a divine emotion into the center of that experience. And even though there's pain in the body, you're bringing in something else into the center of the experience. Breathing in may be well, breathing out may be happy, breathing in may be, and that often is a support for myself. It's a support enough to be able to sit with pain a bit longer. And then when you're sitting with that pain a bit longer, you can get those wonderful experiences where the awareness of the pain becomes something that you can rest in. There can still be pain, but there isn't the experience of suffering, a being who's suffering. But that's what good mindfulness is. There's awareness of pain, and it is unpleasant, but there's not the adding the, I can't stand this is too much. There's not the experience of suffering as well. And sometimes we can get to that space and sometimes we can't. But it's a very noble effort. And so these, just doing 10 more breaths and then seeing, can you do it for 10 more? Can you do it for 10 more? The pain gets less scary. You get familiar with having sat with pain more often. You get some experience of having gone beyond it or being able to separate from it a few times. It actually gets interesting. Sometimes the working with a lot of pain, the mindfulness gets good, and then that helps the collectedness, the sense of right mindfulness, giving rise to right concentration. Sometimes the mind becomes peaceful, or all that experience of pain is just gone for a period of time because peace becomes the object. A peaceful mind becomes the object. And we never really know when that's going to happen. Sometimes it can be a lot of pain and it looks like it's not working and nothing's happening. There's irritation and you're patiently enduring and you're spreading metta, and all of a sudden the mind's very peaceful. It's not a problem. But so it's a very rich area to experience. But for someone with chronic pain issues, I think probably learn some other methods in that mindfulness-based stress reduction probably be very valuable.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 4, dear Ajahn. May I know if the word sentient beings encompasses departed relatives, devas, and the locality deities too? I would like to offer marriage to all the beings in all the realms whenever I do any offerings in the future. I do not wish to miss out anyone. Thank you so much for your guidance here, Ajahn.
So often in the Mahayana traditions, people dedicate merit to, they would usually put the words all sentient beings. And so if you add the word all, it does include everybody. And then dedicate this merit to all sentient beings. But if you want to, it's okay to change the words. Right? Words are a convention. So if it feels more, if to say all beings in all realms works for you, then I would recommend saying that. It's just like, okay, I dedicate merits to all beings in all realms. Then everybody's covered. So feel free to change the words in a way that works for you, so that you feel that you've covered all the bases. All beings, all realms, all universes, past, present, and future. Okay, got it. Sadhu.
Sadhu Prajan. Question 5, dear Ajahn. I read that humans make up just 0.01 of Earth life, example animals. If the denominator includes beings such as hungry ghost and hell denizen, the humans likely make up a much smaller percentage of the 6 realms of beings. This gives credence to the Lord Buddha's statement that the human rebirth is extremely rare. I understand that a human rebirth is assured if one can hold the 5 precepts habitually. Most people around us seem to keep the 5 precepts and are generally decent, so it is surprising that humans make up such a low percentage. Is it the case that the law of karma are terribly strict, such that the effects of bad acts are magnified, or are the majority of beings really that wretched? Thank you.
So I don't know where this person lives, but she's very fortunate that most of the people she knows are keeping the 5 precepts. So this is her vast merits. So the village that I rely upon for my alms food has about 200 residents. And from those 200 residents, among the adults, because they're farmers and they work quite hard, you could say they're decent people. Yeah, they're decent people, but can you say they're keeping the 5 precepts? They all use pesticides on their crops. So they're all killing lots of bugs. And most of them, when they come home, will have a beer at the end of the day. So they've been working in the fields, they're hot, they want to relax, they have their beer. So in the village where I live, most people are not keeping 5 precepts. So the 5 precepts does include alcohol consumption, intoxicating drinks and drugs that lead to heedlessness. So there are about 6 to 8 people who come up and join the evening chanting with the monks most days. And those are the people who are keeping the 5 precepts out of 200. And I guess the kids, the kids probably aren't not yet drinking too much, but so yeah, I think to keep the 5 precepts purely, there's not that many human beings doing it, and from what I can see. And the other thing in that statement was, if one keeps the 5 precepts, one is, I think she said, assured a human rebirth. And it's not assured, unfortunately. It's likely, it's probable. It is the cause. The cause for being born human is keeping the 5 precepts. But Lord Buddha says it's dependent on a couple of things. It's dependent upon the average level of virtue that you've had throughout your life, but it's also dependent upon your mind state as you're dying and the karma that ripens at that time. And he gives an example, an analogy. He said it's like throwing a stick up into the sky. Because we've all made good karmas and we've all made bad karmas, you don't really know at that moment which end of the stick is going to hit the ground. And that's what he said rebirth is like. You could, even if you've been a good person, have a life in the woeful realms. So this is one of the reasons we aspire to be better than humans. Luang Por Anan uses the word manusa devo. We want to be, if we keep our 5 precepts, but we also keep 8 precepts once a week, if we practice meditation, practice forgiveness, we have the human foundation of the sila, but we also have the deva qualities of having conscience, fear of wise fear of consequences, hiriyottapa, and practicing generosity, practicing forgiveness, offering harmlessness to beings. So if you can have a deva-like mind some days of the week and a minimum standard of a human's ethics, then you're increasing your chances of a human or higher rebirth. So,
Question 6. What is shunyata? I feel when all positives and negatives go to zero, that state is shunyata. Please could you comment?
yeah.
Thank you.
When all negatives and positives go to zero. So that to me sounds like this practitioner is describing a mind that has some equilibrium, equipoise, upekkha, equanimity. What's interesting about and in anybody who does a lot of meditation, there'll be craving for, craving not for, liking, not liking, think about the future, think about the past, and then there will be enough mindfulness and enough clarity, enough centeredness that just sees a thought as a thought arising and ceasing, and not as much interest in which hindrance is it, or is it pleasant or is it unpleasant. As the mindfulness gets sharper and clearer, there's this just thoughts are thoughts, feelings are feelings, not I, not mine. The mind is more centered, more balanced, more steady. So Lord Buddha did say that among the conditions, equanimity is the condition that is closest to nibbana. So that's an interesting, so I think that person's getting a sense for that. And so nibbana is shunyata means empty or voidness, emptiness. And so emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness is empty of what? Empty of self, empty of solidity, empty of grasping, empty of clinging, empty of craving. So shunyata, is important to understand, is experienced by awareness, a presence of mind, a sense of palpable sense of clarity, knows emptiness. So Tanatananand, my teacher, describes that the way it usually happens in terms of the meditation practitioner's experience is that you will see one of the three characteristics, either impermanence or unsatisfactoriness, and then, or the not self, depending on what you're contemplating. Suppose you're contemplating feelings arising, ceasing, arising, ceasing, 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 ceasing. You get a deeper insight into anicca. And then when you have that deeper insight into impermanence, the sense of self falls away for a period of time. Then you're knowing emptiness, empty of solidity, empty of permanence, empty of self. Sometimes it's the dukkha. It's like just seeing that's dukkha, or that's dukkha, that's unsatisfactory, that's unsatisfactory, that hurts, that hurts, that hurts, and there's a letting go. Just letting go of everything that hurts, sense of self falls away for a period of time. So Ajahn says the insight will be into one of the three characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. And then there's a letting go in the mind of the habitual grasping of things as being a self, and then the experiences of emptiness. So sense of self drops away for a period of time. What the awareness knows is emptiness. Emptiness of solidity, emptiness of permanence, emptiness of grasping at it as being a self. So I hope that's helpful.
Question 7, dear Ajahn. Why do you think it is so difficult for one to look inwards compared to one looking outwards at others? I have to be very mindful 24/7 to bring my mind inwards and tell myself to mind my own business instead of others' business. This practice isn't easy, but I know it is doable. However, in the case of educating a child, a parent has to look outwardly at home at how the child behaves and correct them at appropriate times. In this case, how should a parent be practicing looking inwards more than outwards? Thank you.
So Luang Por Chah's advice to the monks was that if they wanted to develop insight and they wanted their samadhi to develop, they want to develop insight, concentration, good mindfulness. He said one's critical faculty, or one's kind of balance of awareness, should be 95% inward and 5% on what others are doing. So, of course, it's more possible in a monastery where there are high standards. So when the monks and nuns have to keep certain standards, then it's easier to, it's not easy, but it's easier to be, when people are basically more or less behaving well, it's easier to be not too fault-finding. At the same time, the type of people that want to be monks and nuns tend to be very idealistic and often do have quite a fault-finding habit. So there's a reason Luang Por Chah was addressing that, making that point so boldly to the monastics, was this has been, when you have a refined sense of etiquette, you can always find fault with the people who aren't keeping it perfectly as well. So he's pointing to the fact that for you to be peaceful, the paradigm you want to aim for is that the balance is 95% on you and your faults and things you're yet to abandon, 5% on others. Of course, when you're a parent, it is your responsibility. Part of your karmic obligation is to be aware of the child. And so probably the way I would work with it would be when they're in kindergarten or when they're at daycare, that's the time that you're able to give your attention and stay centered and take some time. Probably you have to schedule periods of time where you're more inwardly focused. And then when they come home from kindergarten, for those first couple of years, you've got to have your eye on them most of the time, probably. And that's exhausting. And that's the gift a mother or a father, a carer gives their child. That's one of the reasons Lord Buddha says we can never really repay the debt of gratitude we owe to our parents, the amount of attention and energy they give to just keeping us alive, just keeping a toddler from falling down a staircase or wandering onto a road, and it requires an incredible amount of commitment and energy. And my mother I have a twin brother and a younger brother. My mother, she said she'd developed a special ability that she would know from the noises that we were making whether we were okay or not. So if it was like idle chatter, a little bit of kerfuffle, mildly fighting, no problem. If there's serious yelling or serious crying, yes, she had to come and look at us. The thing that she said that scared her most was when we were perfectly silent. Then she knew we were up to no good. Once I think I was 3. My younger brother was 18 months younger, 1.5. My twin brother was 3, and we were silent for a while. So my mum was in the kitchen preparing the evening meal, and my elder brothers and sisters hadn't come home from school yet. She came into the TV room where we were, and the TV was turned over, and my twin brother and I had taken the back off, and we were pulling the TV apart, spreading all of the bits of the TV around the television room. So that we didn't electrocute ourselves is a minor miracle. And of course, that was a black and white TV. And a few days later, we got a color TV because I don't think that one was working anymore. And that's when I discovered that Kermit the Frog was actually green and Big Bird was yellow. So until then, they'd all been shades of gray. So but yes, you do have to keep eyes on children because I remember I've just been thinking a little bit about my early childhood. I was trying to train myself. What are the earliest memories I can remember? And I can't remember taking the TV apart, but I can remember the new television coming and seeing that Kermit was green. Another thing that we did do that I can remember is we were still in nappies, and there was this 1 meter, what they used to call them in Australia, a cyclone fence. It's kind of made out of galvanized islands, probably iron. It's about 1 meter high, and little bars of metal. And my twin brother and I, we used to be able to use our big toe and our little toe and climb up the fence and throw ourselves over the fence. And because behind the fence was a lake and more of a sense of a wonderful backyard. So we would do that in perfect silence. 3-year-olds climb up a fence, climb over the fence, be playing on the other side of the fence. My mother would come out screaming. The reason I remember it is because it used to hurt. The big toe, between pinching the big toe and the little toe to go up, that actually hurt a bit, but we did it anyway. And my younger brother would be on the other side of the bars, looking at us, cheering us on, you know. Yes, children, little terrors. They're exhausting. And so yeah, once they go into kindergarten, once you get a few hours to yourself, some quiet time, I think that's your time to come inwardly, regain some energy. And yes, Anumodana to all of the parents. Sadhu.
Question 8. Dear Ajahn, I feel dispassionate with my household life since I started meditating. I used to love sport, not anymore. I don't like socializing. I prefer solitude. Can you give some advice, please? Thank you.
Sounds great to me. What's the problem? You know, yeah, so maybe the person may be worried that they're becoming antisocial, and so it's actually, for me, I would see this as a good sign that you used to like sport, you used to like socializing, and now you prefer to be alone. So Gaya Vivek, Chitta Vivek is solitude of the body supports solitude of the mind, and then solitude of the mind supports becoming aloof from the hindrances, supports the development of samadhi. So it's actually a good sign that your practice is going in the right direction. And I think we have to be careful not to develop aversion to everyone and everything else. It's like there's more sensitivity. You're aware that these things are coarse. The thing is, the mind's becoming more refined. When the mind was coarse, it used to think that was fun. When the mind becomes more refined, it sees that that's coarse and it's not actually that fun. And compared to the pleasure that I get from having more solitude and from meditating more, studying, chanting, etc., that pleasure is superior. So that's why the mind inclines towards it. There's less suffering, there's more sensitivity, there's more well-being. It's not happiness, it's not fun, but it's contentment, some kind of quality of inner fullness, inner okayness, well-being. And Lord Buddha describes that peacefulness is the highest pleasure. So it's not like happy, happy, joy, joy, but it's like, yeah, there's just well-being, contentment. You feel okay. You don't need things outside to feel an emptiness. You have well-being in your own mind. It's a good sign. But in terms of every human being doesn't have some needs to have some healthy social contact. So then it might be a matter of, it's not uncommon for serious practitioners for their friendship group to change significantly. So you may find that you need new friends who are sincere Buddhist practitioners. Then spending time with them discussing Dhamma might be enjoyable in a different way. The Dhamma Vichaya, the investigation into Dhamma. And it sounds okay to me. I don't like sport either. So my father used to force us to play soccer. And the only reason I agreed was he used to give us 50 cents to buy a bag of mixed lollies at the end of the game. So, all right, that's what got me to the soccer game. 50 cents in Australia used to buy quite a few lollies, back in the day. Do people know what lollies are? Candy, sweeties. It's an Australian word for candies. Yeah.
Question 9, dear Ajahn. Thank you so much for your time. Sometimes in meditation, there is a heaviness in the heart diaphragm area, as well as some dark clouds that cover parts of brightness in the mind. Can Ajahn provide some guidance on how to work with this energy? Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the case. Whenever the kilesas come into the mind, I often talk about the 16 upakilesa, negative qualities. They kind of occupy the mind for periods of time. Another list, kind of maybe easier to observe, is which of the 5 hindrances are present. These are dark qualities that darken the mind, and they do oppress the mind. So actually, that this practitioner can see and feel this is a good sign. It means there's more truth discerning awareness present. It's like an antidote force. Clarity and lightness and brightness is seeing the darkness and is feeling the felt experience of what it's like to have a mind that is oppressed, still oppressed by the powers of greed, hatred, and delusion. So Ajahn recommends developing loving kindness as a support to the development of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. When we bring metta into the heart, metta is a bright quality. And it's very powerful, much more powerful than people realize. But when you do it sincerely, diligently, in a disciplined way for years, you really begin to understand how powerful it is, because you can use metta to actually wash out dark and negative qualities. You literally, once you get skilled at bringing it about in the mind, and then you can actually use it. It's like a replacement by opposites. Loving kindness isn't greed. Loving kindness isn't hatred or aversion. It's utterly wholesome mind state. So when you bring the brightness of the loving kindness into the heart, then that simply by holding that in awareness long enough, the darkness evaporates, and is we can also develop. You can develop insight with this. If the mindfulness is enough that you can see that you have awareness of that feeling of where it feels oppressive, then you're breathing in may I be well, breathing out may I be happy, breathing in may I be well, but you've got part of your awareness on that feeling. You'll be able to notice it move around and change. And then you'll also be able to notice it cease. And so Venerable Lumpur Panyawado, a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua, who was believed to be an anagami, I met him as a novice 29 years ago. And he described this practice that he had cultivated insight by being aware of those feelings in the chest area, how they moved around and changed. So it's a good thing that this person's sensitivity is aware of that. You just try to keep your center of awareness of the breath in that heart area, but then you can add the metta. May I be well, may I be happy. Just support the mind to be happy to be there and to continue meditating. and then just watch it move around and pay particular attention to when it ceases, and just notice that cessation, nirodha, cessation, cessation, changing, cessation, changing, cessation. You can develop some good insight with that practice.
Question 10, dear Ajahn. I do not have any cravings to reach any stages of jhana. Is this all right? I only strive to improve myself to let go on a daily basis, and I have made strong aspirations to improve my sitting and cultivation, hoping to maintain mindfulness and calmness until my final liberation. Achieving jhana stage to me is like aiming to get an A, gain a high distinction. I feel stressed even thinking about it. I prefer to be an average person. Is this the right view to begin with? Many thanks for your guidance here. Does one need to reach to jhana stage in order for one to be fully liberated? Thank you.
I actually resonate with this person. I was, in high school, my teachers used to say to me, Brett, my name was, Brett, although you do well, you could do better. And I would answer, well, I don't want to do better. I'm happy enough with having done this well. And they didn't like that answer. Partly it was, I didn't like those, I was the kid at the back row chatting with my friends. And I didn't like those kids in the front row that answered all the questions. And they weren't cool. And part of it was I just, even what a part of it, but I couldn't articulate it to my teachers. Part of it was what they were teaching wasn't something that I could fully give my heart to. So there was like, I realized that in hindsight, there was something in me that was willfully holding back, because it's like, no, I don't want to fully give my heart to modern history or algebra or whatever it was. It doesn't mean anything to me. So there was something in me that was content with an 88.5. I didn't care that I didn't get 95 or whatever. And when I met Buddhist practice, it did change, because I thought, okay, this is something worth giving oneself to. This is worth studying. And but similarly, when I was a junior monk, everyone was going about jhanas. I used to find it annoying, and I just wanted some peace, please, any peace. And my mind was already oppressed with lots of kilesas, and the idea of having to accomplish something profoundly spiritual was stressful. So I do have some sympathy. The commitment to cultivation, making the best of one's cultivation, and practicing contentment. Of course, this is the foundation that will ripen as jhana. So the point is you keep laying the causes. You're diligent in your practice. You incline your mind to be as peaceful as it will become. And I like the way Tanajananand describes the development of samadhi, because he doesn't separate actually the jhanas from the lesser samadhi. He describes kanika samadhi as samadhi, upajara samadhi as samadhi, and then the appana as samadhi. So you have some samadhi, and the kanika samadhi is when the mind becomes peaceful just for a few moments or a few minutes. Then we become skilled at bringing the mind to some peace for some moments. And then what happens, because we're consistent, is the duration of the time that we're being peaceful gets deeper and longer. So it might be 5 to 10 minutes out of a half an hour, the mind becomes peaceful. That can sometimes happen twice in the half an hour period. Now, what happens is you just keep continuing, and you just enjoy whatever peacefulness arises, and there's some contentment with it. And but we keep sowing the causes, and eventually those few moments becomes those 5 minutes, becomes those 10 minutes, becomes those 20 minutes, and that is what becomes the jhana. And in fact, desire for it is often an obstruction. So we just keep meditating, and we just bring the mind to whatever peacefulness we can bring it to, and we just enjoy that, appreciate that, and that will become the jhanic state, as long as we keep increasing our efforts. So do you need jhana to attain enlightenment? So Full enlightenment, yes. Ajahn has explained that if a person has upajara samadhi, which is neighborhood concentration, that's that 10, 15, 20 minutes of some peacefulness with only wholesome thoughts. If a person has that level of samadhi and fairly frequently, and combines that with wise contemplation, for example, parts of the body, seeing the parts of the body as elements, that can lead to the stream enter experience. And then after the stream entry experience, the person will have jhana samadhi much more likely that the person will have the jhanas. Having, imagine you glimpse nibbana, you see how wonderful it is to have no suffering at all. There's going to be a lot of energy available for the unshakable faith, for one thing, a lot of energy available for ripening that fruition. So,
Sadhu. Thank you,
I set
Ajahn.
the intention today to answer a full 10 questions within 45 minutes, and I did manage to do that. So we're getting a bit behind. We've got a few more questions to answer. So I'm patting myself on the back. Well done, Ajahn. 10 questions, 45 minutes. Some of you have been waiting a couple of months for those. I apologize for that. So keeping focused on answering the question, not going off in too many side tangents. So, take care, everybody. See you next time, hopefully.
See you.
Thank you,
Thank
Ajahn.
you,
Thank you.
Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you, sister.